So I was fat, about 30, 40 pounds heavier than I am now. And I started to see this girl. So it inspired me to lose weight. And I started taking pictures on my phone, documenting my weight loss pictures. They eventually turned into videos. And I just got comfortable recording, recording myself. And I don't know, about 2 months or about 2 weeks into it, she finds out that she's going to go out of the country for a year. And this is in June of 2017. So she found out she was going to leave in October 1st for a whole year. And I was like, oh man, we hooked up a few times before, when we were younger in college and the year, maybe a couple years afterwards, stuff like that. And timing was always off. It was weird. So once again, the same thing happened. And I was thinking about it. I was like, if she's leaving the country for a year, I'm going through, sort of talking to her. I was like separated from my wife. I decided, I was like, I got to wrap up this whole divorce thing. And I don't know, I'm like, well, I'll just use this year while she's gone. Instead of doing the whole long distance thing, I can work on myself. And when she comes back, then I'll be, we can sort of revisit this. So I fly out to LA to meet her, and I tell her, I was like, well, let's just take a break for a year. No big deal. And she goes, if you want to take a break for a year starting in October, why don't we just stop talking right now forever? She's a tough cookie. And the whole thing blew up then. So I wind up, about a week later, I wind up on a date with a girl. Turns into a 17-hour cocaine-filled escapade. And I meet this rock and roll band. And it turns out that the lead singer's uncle is a cinematographer for my favorite director. And I just talked to the other girl about, she loves movies. She's like, what are your top 5 movies? And I tell her, I was like, well, it's all these Michael Mann movies. And I love him because it's his cinematography. So when I met this lead singer whose uncle was a cinematographer, I was like, that's a coincidence. Anyway, I wind up going and partying in Europe for a little while. And I realized when I'm in the south of France, I'm like, dude, I'm not happy here. I'm surrounded by all this luxury. I'm looking at all these people in this $7,000 for 5-night hotel with yachts outside, Lambo, Ferrari, all of it's like the height of wealth. I'm like, no one in here is happy. We're talking like multimillionaires and probably a billionaire or two in some cases. And I'm looking around and they're all looking at each other, seeing who has more money or who has more power. The girls are looking around at the different girls saying, is she better looking than me? Is her boyfriend or husband more powerful than me? And I was like, this doesn't solve. And I got kind of glum because I thought back on that first girl and I was like, it doesn't really matter what you have, money-wise. It doesn't solve. So I come back from Europe, and I don't know. I wind up sort of talking to this band a little bit more. Then I decided to set up an entertainment company, and I'm filming the whole thing because I was so used to documenting my journey and weird stuff like that. Guy's uncle pops in. Then this is my favorite trumpeter, Wynton Marsalis. Like I stay in a room that's across a courtyard from him. I'm like, wow, that's weird. And then, some other things kind of happen. But I keep talking to the band, and I have all this footage. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get this girl back. I'm going to make her a movie with all this footage. So I call a production company, and I'm like kind of on the fence about it. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to make her a movie. I'm going to sign this band to manage them because I love them. And I'm going to make the entertainment company that I set up I'm going to make it in her name. So if the band blows up, then on their albums, it'll have her name on the side of it. It's my company, but it's her name. So it's like a nice thing. Hopefully I can win her back. And because the girl was smarter than me, I decided I'm just telling the truth in all of these videos. So I decided on September 23rd, 2017, to make this movie. I send the first mock-up of the credits to the production company on that day. And I wound up going on tour with the band in October. And it was weird. Like the second day that this girl goes on her trip, October 2nd, the next day I flew out to go to Paris to meet the band and then go on tour with them. But that same day, Tom Petty dies. And I talked to the first girl. I was like, when we were still talking, I said, we talked about how we liked Tom Petty. I was like, well, I saw him as a kid in concert. She's like, oh yeah, I got to see him once in New York. So I was like, well, maybe we should go see him before the whole thing blew up. And she's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, he's getting up there in age. You don't know how much longer he's going to live. And sure enough, the second day of her trip, the night before I go to Paris, Tom Petty dies. And then a couple weeks later, or maybe a month later, I had this Vedic astrologer, reading the night before it blew up with that girl. Turns out he dies. And he has this exhibit in the MoMA, which I went to in December of last year. And all these weird things. It's like these people are dying. I'm like winding up, staying next to my favorite trumpeter. I wind up, when I'm on a tour, I meet one of my favorite DJs, DJ Falcon. He's like a French touch, Daft Punk kind of style DJ. And I had also talked to the girl. I was like, yeah, I made this disc. It's like the 13th installment of these discs that I make with this old friend of mine. And sure enough, and DJ Falcon was on the discs. And next thing I know, I'm talking to him in Europe. I was like, wow, it's like all these coincidences are happening. So anyway, I wind up getting all the footage together. More of these little coincidences happen. And I'm just like, this is almost like a screenplay. And all I'm doing is filming cool shit that's happening in my life. So we get back from tour. Then we go out to Seattle. Turns out the band makes it on Monday Night Football. And then they wind up on this KEXP in-studio session. They're starting to blow up. So I get all the footage. I put it all together. And then I get it to the production company, and he starts making, the editor starts making this thing into a movie. Well, we have a first cut screening in New York at the end of December, on December 30th, and the band hates it because they you took way too much credit for this, what else did they say? They were like, I got punched in the face by the lead singer after the movie. I got some footage of it. So they don't like it, but I'm like, okay, well, I can make this work or whatever. Oh yeah, and something else interesting happened. I asked the band, I was like, well, who would you want your booking agent to be? And the drummer says, he's like, Tom Windish. I called him Marco in the movie. Tom Windish. He's like the number one booker in the fucking world. And sure enough, sometime in, I don't know, September or something, before I decided to formally make the movie, I had this company that helped kids get into graduate school. Well, this kid shows up, he's 30 years old, and he's like, yeah, I tell him about what I'm working on. He's like, who would be good? Windish. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, that's what the drummer just said. Can you set it up? So he sets it up. We start talking. I'm sending him all this stuff. Anyway, so I'm talking to Windish after the first cut screening. I'm like, dude, even though the band hated it, I lied. I was like, this band's gonna blow up. They fucking kick ass. He's like, dude, I dig the confidence in your voice. I'm like, yeah, you got to check out this new material, all this crap. So I set up a second cut screening after I decided I needed to revise some things in the movie or the documentary, and go out to LA. And I actually, it turns out there's not enough people to screen it at the Soho House in West Hollywood. So I text Windish. I'm like, yo, Windish, the screening's off, whatever. Well, he doesn't get the text by coincidence. So he shows up while I'm in LA with the editor who'd helped me make the movie. We just happened to still go out because we figured, yeah, what the fuck, the whole thing blew up, why not? And he texts, he's like, okay, I'm gonna be 15 minutes late. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? It's not the Soho House, we canceled it. Get to the Sunset Tower now. So he comes over. He's like, what the fuck? We set up a makeshift screening. It was like this janky setup in the suite, and we screened the movie. So we go down, me and the editor go down to the balcony, and we're just having drinks or whatever, and we're filming, and we're like, oh, he's right up there. We could even point, we're like, he's in that window right there as we're hanging out on the balcony. And anyway, so he finishes the movie, he texts me, he's like, I'm tired, I'm going home. I'm like, okay, cool, I guess it didn't go so well. And the next Monday, the band's lawyer contacts me. They're like, we told you to get rid of this documentary. Now we've got we got Tom Windish who's pissed off at us, who says this is the most bizarre meeting he ever had. So I figured I'm cooked. Well, fast forward a couple weeks, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I started to try to prove the existence of God in the documentary, because that first girl, she didn't believe in God. She's like, I'm an atheist. I was like, how can you be an atheist? Thinking to myself, You died and you were resuscitated by a miracle. I died when I was a kid, like at 9 months, and I got resuscitated after 8 minutes without having any brain damage. And God exists. So I'm like, part of me in these coincidences, I was like, this must be God, So I look at the book of Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, it talks about, it's like, oh, there's this guy who's like the Lion of Judah who comes around. He's on a white horse. And the documentary, we were partying on cocaine. I proved the existence of God because all the people who viewed it weren't part of it. They were like, dude, this movie kicks ass. So I was on a white horse. I'm a Leo, so I'm like, I'm a lion. And on my dad's side, they come from just north of Israel, like Lebanon or Syria. I was like, well, I guess I could be like Judah, like a descendant of Judah. So yeah, maybe it's me. So I was like, wait, if that's if I'm the line of Judah, who's the villain? Who's the Antichrist? I was like, well, it must be Donald Trump. If that's the case, because he's the red horse rider, red's Republican, and he has a great sword, meaning nuclear weapons, and he's got what does he have? He's got, he speaks great things, like that's Make America Great Again. So on March 13th of 2018, I'm like, wait, if he's the Antichrist, and I saw this headline come across the way that says that he is starting a space force. I was like, why would that make a difference? Who gives a fuck if there's a space force? Was he going to fight aliens and shit? I was like, well, that must be wrong if he's the Antichrist. So what? Oh, there's no aliens. We're all alone. And when I had that thought, boom, I dropped to my fucking knees. Things pixelate, and I look, and I didn't look, but it was God. And he went boop. You want to fucking prove my existence? It's time to fucking rock and roll. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Yeah, okay, I get it. You're there. Okay, sorry. You're there. Got it. So anyway, so I freaked the fuck out. I'm like, does fucking God exist? He's like right there. Didn't say anything. He just confirmed, yes, we're all alone. But it was weird because as I had the thought, we're all alone, he confirmed it. So it was like when I thought it, immediately he responded in my body. So I freak out. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I guess I am the guy. And I look, and it turns out Moses had this thing called a burning bush. Moses, apparently, he's not mythical. He was a real dude. And when he said it burned without burning, he would have said in 2018, it pixelated. So anyway, so I decide, I look in the rest of the book of Revelation. It turns out people are giving these confessions. So I go and I admit all the shit that I've ever done wrong, right? I record, I put it on YouTube. It turns out the night before I do, there's a fucking trumpet sound. You can Google this, a trumpet sound in the sky next to the volcano in Hawaii. And it's called Palhala, Hawaii. And it's real fucking freaky. It's like 43 seconds long. I didn't know this at the time, so I posted my confession, all the videos. I'm like, dude, this is the rapture. It's what Christians call the rapture. I'm the son of God, And I post some more videos, and I'm like, May 21st is the fucking deadline, because it's 7 years after this nut, Harold Camping, said that the end of the world was going to happen, and there's supposed to be a 7-year period of tribulation according to the Bible. So anyway, I wind up going, across the country and all this stuff, and as I keep believing, I'm like, okay, you can read my thoughts, all my thoughts. So I keep believing. And sure enough, on May 21st, Japanese time, because I told people as the sun rises over Japan, we're in the sun, with we're in Armageddon, but that would be May 20th, U.S. time. Well, guess what happened on May 20th? There was the lava from the volcano, which erupted a couple weeks before. It hits on my day. In the book of Revelation, they say there's a sea of glass mingled with fire before the final bowls of God's wrath, the final part of the end times. So anyway, so I'm like, what the fuck? I got to see a glass of fire. I'm the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Yeah, let's do this, man. I got my confessions up. I got other people to confess to. Turns out, I realize I can start taking full breaths again after smoking for 21 years. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because I kept posting more shit that I've done wrong. I've done a lot of bad stuff. Like I stole $20,000 like a thief in the night. I got away scot-free. But in my confessions, I uploaded and I confessed that because a year after I stole it a long time ago, I wound up losing everything that I had. So even though I got away from a legal standpoint, I still fucking lost everything. My point is that I post all the other stuff that I've done wrong in my time. And after the final thing that I got out, after I remembered all of it, I could breathe again. So I texted one of the other people who gave me a confession. I was like, dude, how's your health? He's like, you're never going to believe this. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now that you ask, it's perfect. I used to be an asthmatic, And I had asthma. I would have an asthma attack every week for like my whole life. I even had a nebulizer when I was a kid. And after I did that video, nothing. I haven't had an asthma attack since. I was like, holy shit, when you confess, if you get everything out and you do it publicly, you give God an audience, like by putting it online, any illness you have goes away. I was like, oh, I should take these videos and take them offline. So I do that. And I keep exploring. I was like, wait, if you're on a mission, kind of like Moses or Jesus, if you're on a mission to prove God's existence by giving him a platform to prove that he exists and you admit everything you do, you never get ill. And if you follow each coincidence, then it leads you down to your perfect path, right? Well, I keep looking a little bit more. Turns out there was this celestial formation in the sky. It was a once in a 10,000 year formation. And it points to chapter 12 of the book of Revelation, the woman in the apocalypse. Guess what happened? Guess when that formed? September 23rd, 2017, the same day that I decided to make my little documentary. So I was like, oh shit, I'm the anointed one. Anyway, so if I keep going, and I look at all the chapter 13, it's describing totally Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, like to a T. They're the two beasts of Revelation. And guess what it says? It says there's 5 months of anxiety, followed by a 13-month, 1 day and 1 hour period where 1/3 of humanity dies. And after that period, then the rest of the people who don't upload full confessions, they die. And guess what? Donald Trump, he's supposed to have, this beast of Revelation, supposed to have 42 months of power. Well, it started January 20th of 2017, and that would end July 20th of 2020. So if you take the 13-day, 1 month, and 1 hour period and backtrack from July 20th of 2020, that's June 19th, 2019. That's next June. But if you take the 5-month period where everyone has anxiety when they realize that I'm the Son of God, if you go back from then that's January 19th, 2019 at noon. And guess what? Today's December 17th. So that's in 33 days. What a coincidence. That's the same age as Jesus Christ. So get this. If you upload a coincidence, you get full health. I'm sorry, if you upload a full confession, you get full health. You'll need a new body for what's coming. It's probably going to be a climate change-related natural disasters, as well as war, famine, shit like that. Everything just sort of coincidentally goes wrong starting on June 19th. But you get a new body, i.e. your full health, and if you follow any coincidence you want or that you have in your life, then they're going to be like breadcrumbs leading you to your perfect heaven on earth. And I'm supposed to gather everyone to Israel to go to the Megiddo Valley, which is or the Jezreel Valley, which is outside of Megiddo. So if you want to upload a confession and go to Israel, then you're going to live. And if you decide to hold on to your existing life and not upload a confession, then because God's taking control of the whole fucking world, you're going to die.